Have you ever almost deleted a photo or not even noticed it, and then discovered it was actually one of the better ones that you took that day? Now watch me rescue a dull shot from Kyoto and turn it into something that I actually love. If this is your first time here, welcome. I'm Michael and this is Processing the World. Today I'm working on a single image from the thousands that you'll invariably take if you visit Fushimi Inari Shrine in Kyoto. Now the edit is simple, it's subtle, and it's a totally personal take. You may not agree with every choice I make, and that's the whole point. And that's also what makes editing your images so rewarding. Now as a quick rundown, this was shot on a Canon 5 DSLR with a 16 to 35mm f4 lens at a 60th of a second ISO 1600. As you'll see, the highlights are protected, but the frame feels a little flat and dark. So I'm going to nudge the exposure, recover the highlights, lift the midtones, clean up the noise, and add a couple of local light masks to give the overall image a little more depth. So let's dive into the edit. When you visit the Fushimi Inari Shrine in Kyoto, one of the highlights is, of course, the Senbon Torii gates. Now, Senbon Torii literally means thousands of torii gates. These gates are donations by individuals and companies, and you'll find the donator's name and the date of the donation inscribed on the back of each gate. Now, it's quite easy to take thousands upon thousands of photographs when you're there, and today we're going to work on this particular image, which it's okay in its own right, but it is a little bit flat. And let's see if we can quite quickly and very subtly bring it back to life. So let's open this in Camera RAW and begin our process. Now, it's a reasonably well exposed image if you consider that the highlights are protected, but it is, of course, quite dark. Now, this was shot on the Canon 5 DSLR, ISO 1600 with a 16 to 35mm lens. That was the f4 version. My exposure here was a 60th of a second. So starting top to bottom, let's bring up the exposure. That's the first thing I want to do here. And I do want to bring it up quite a way, so around about 80 points on the exposure. Now notice that I've lost the exposure at the back here. This is really overexposed, but we will deal with that a little later on. So having raised the exposure, let's drop our highlights back, and about 33 points should do there, just to bring some of that highlight detail back. I'm going to bring up the shadows, about 40 odd points. And I've mentioned in previous videos that for me, this gives me almost a filmic look to my images, which I do enjoy. Drop back the blacks to increase my contrast there a little. And I do want to add some clarity. So we're going to add 10, 15 points of clarity on this one. Clarity being midtone contrast, it just gives me that extra clarity in the middle of the image that I really like, in the midtones. Coming down, now this image shot up ISO 1600. It was on a 5 DSLR. There is going to be some noise, so I will actually denoise this particular image. Won't make you wait to watch all of this, but we'll come back after it's finished. And that's the denoising complete, so at 100%. If I turn that off, you can see it's made a bit of a difference there, which is quite nice. I like that. So I'm going to leave that at 50. That works for me. We'll zoom back out and come down to the sharpening. Now, as per usual, whenever I'm sharpening something, I do hold down the Option or Alt key and move the masking slider to the right. You may have seen this in a previous video. It just shows me that anywhere that is registered as black on the screen, that is where the sharpening will not be applied, but anywhere that is white, that is where it will be sharpened. So obviously I'm looking at the outlines of the gates and the script on them. So that's looking pretty good. And I'll bring my sharpening up to around about 80 points, which, as I mentioned before as well, is a good starting point for sharpening my image. It allows me options at the other end when I go to output. Now let's come down to the chromatic aberration, remove that. This is the profile corrections that basically the Adobe software is gauging the characteristics that are inherent in each lens and mitigating against anything such as overly vignetted images or any distortion in the middle of the lens. Now, in this instance, I personally feel that when I switch this on, you'll notice it brightens the image quite considerably, and the vignetting is way too over the top. So I'm going to drop that back. I don't want that to be that strong. In fact, I may even vignette the image a little myself after I've cropped. So that's about right. Now, let's finish the image coming back up to the top by doing some masking, and I will crop it. Now, I actually may just drop my exposure back very slightly as well, because the Camera RAW correction has probably brightened it more than I would like across the mid of the image. Okay, so let's drop that back a little. Masking. The first thing I want to do, I am going to use select objects because I want to basically mask this end portion of the image. It's a little too bright for me. I could just brush, but I find it easier to select objects, and I'm going to zoom in. So Command plus, or just drag, or use your scroll wheel, Command plus. Now, just going to paint around this area. This is the area that I wish to select as my object for the masking, and I just draw an outline box first, pretty rough really. Then using the right square bracket key, I can make the brush that little bit bigger so I can paint it quicker. So that's just an on the fly way of working. So having selected the majority of this area here, I'm going to have a problem there. That's not bad. Let's just undo that and just drag that exposure down. That's looking pretty good. Now, incidentally, you may have noticed that when I did that, when I selected the mask, I had a red mask, which red against red is not very helpful. So I'll show you how you can change that in a moment. Let's just come back out to full view. And yeah, that's just darkening it down nicely there. Now I'm going to do a brush stroke on the pathway here because I just want to add a little bit more contrast to it. So K for my brush tool. Brush is fairly well feathered. I'm going to just bring the feathering down a little bit. Shift and left square bracket and just paint on the pathway here. Let me just undo those settings. Paint on the pathway here, and we'll just increase the contrast. I'm going to drop back the highlights a little bit, drop back the blacks, but bring up the whites. And that's not bad. That's just giving me a little bit of punch to the pathway. Just makes it a little bit more inviting to the eye, I should say. Now, what I want to do as well is just bring a little bit more drama to these Torii gates. I'm going to do that using a mask, but I'm going to do it using a radial filter. So let's just select my radial gradients, and I will change the, I don't want to use the last used settings. Now notice that if I do this on the red Torii gates, my overlay mask won't show up very well. So I can just temporarily change it. Let's put it to blue, click on that, and let's make our radial gradients. I'll make it quite thin because I'm thinking about sort of a shaft of light effect. Now once I've drawn it, I can reposition it wherever I want it. Let's just see. I want this to be subtle, obviously, so I'm imagining it coming from top right to bottom left. So let's just bring that up a little bit of contrast, bit of whites, down with the blacks a little, and let's just see what we can see. I switch that on and off. It's very subtle. Let's bring it up a little bit more. And yeah, that gives me a little bit of a light ray effect, which I'm quite liking. I can move that around afterwards. Yeah, that's not bad. That just brings a little bit more 3 dimension to it. I might actually take this mask and I might just duplicate it. In duplicating it, I can move it over to the other side, and I can certainly now just change the shape and add a little bit of extra light there, quite like that. That's giving me quite an interesting feel there. It just brings out this light coming through the gate feel. So let's go back to the overall. Let's do a before and after there. That's not bad. That's pretty much close to what I want. The last thing I think I'm going to do here is just crop it. So the reason I'm cropping is, although I like this gate here, I don't really like this area. It sort of drags my eye away from the pathway, which is what I'm more interested in. If I bring that, crop it to there, you'll notice actually, I mean, I know all rules are meant to be broken, but this is now conforming more to the rule of thirds, where This is showing the pathway at a third of the junction into the image. So yeah, that's not bad. The last thing I think I'll do here is just vignette it slightly. And there we have it. We've got a before and an after. Before, so after, before, after, before. And I think that's where we're going to leave this particular image. So let's take an otherwise potentially overlooked image and transformed it into something that I really like. And on that note, I'd love to hear your experiences. Have you ever rescued or revisited an image that you originally dismissed and turned it into something that you loved? And in particular, what made you look twice? Was it updated software that you knew could achieve more? Or you'd improved your skills? Or perhaps just seeing it again with fresh eyes? Let me know in the comments down below. I read everyone and I love hearing other people's experiences. Now, before we finish, here's 5 quick travel tips for Fushimi Inari. The best time to visit is obviously to go very early, before 7:30 AM or late afternoon. The light and the lower crowd numbers will make all the difference. It is free to visit and it's open 24 hours. Now to get there, you go from Kyoto Station, take the JR Nara line to Inari Station. It's one stop and it's about a 5-minute walk to the shrine from there. And most importantly, what to eat nearby? Well, try the Inari Sushi and Matcha Sweets. For a sit-down meal, look for a small udon shop and order Kitsune Udon. Delicious. Now, shrine etiquette. Be respectful. Keep your voices low and don't climb or sit on the shrine structures. And please avoid large tripods during busy times. Follow the signage and remove your hats when you're in the inner shrine areas. Lastly, I'd recommend combining Fushimi Inari with a short walk to Tofukuji or head to Kiyomizo-dera and the Higashiyama Dera district for food and the traditional shops. Again, forgive my pronunciation, links down below. If this edit helps you see what's possible in a single frame, please like, it really helps the channel, and subscribe for more one image edits and travel stories, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next video. Now thank you for watching, safe travels, and of course, as always, keep shooting.